Today, I'm going to be talking to you about a 6-day-a-week training program. Push, pull, legs. You are going to only have 1 day a week to recover. So it's essential that we manage fatigue while going throughout this program. I'm particularly excited to talk to you about this program because this mostly closely mirrors how I actually train myself. You can click the link below and receive this 6-day program, the entire first phase of it, for free. We will email it to you. I'm going to break down in detail day 4 of the program, walk you through why I made the selections that I did. But first, let's talk about how you ended up weight training 6 days a week. If you're new to training, you can absolutely get results 3 days a week. If you're more experienced, maybe you've been doing it for a few years, you can still get results with training 3 days a week. You're just limited on how many things you can achieve at a time. So for example, if your goal is to look better with your clothing on or off, you might have to only be focused on a lower body or a particular part of your upper body if you only have 3 hours a week. As that expands, as you have more time to get to the gym, or as your life changes and circumstances changing, maybe you're further along in your career, maybe the kids are out of the house, so you have more time to devote to yourself, you have those additional hours, it means that you can accomplish more during that time. So it becomes more realistic to have multiple goals. Simultaneously with that though, because you are training more often, it also means that you have less time to recover. So if I'm training 3 days a week, that means I have 4 days off. If I'm training 6 days a week, I only have 1 day off. And that means that fatigue management is very crucial. If you've only got 2-3 hours a week at the gym to train, you need to be training to the brink of failure on each and every set. Whereas someone like me who's training 6 days a week, I'm still pushing myself really hard, but I'm leaving a little bit in the gas tank because it's more of a marathon than a sprint. So today I'm going to walk you through the 6-day program. In particular, we're looking at day 4, and I'm going to walk you through why I designed it the way I did and why I chose the exercises that I did, keeping in mind now that we're going to be training 6 days a week. So the first consideration is how many days do I have available to train? Next, again, is the amount of volume that I have to do in order to achieve results. If I want to grow my quads, I need 14 to 24 hard sets to do that. If I've got 6 days to train, that means I can space everything out entirely differently than if I only have 3 days to train. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have designated days where I only train my legs. And that means that I'm doing series of leg training all next to each other, which means it's going to be particularly brutal. What I mean by that is this. If I do first a squat, and then I go do a leg press, and then I go do a lunge, that is much more challenging on my legs than if I were to squat, give them a break while I'm doing 1-arm rows, then go back and do something like a leg press, then go do something like a pull down. My quads are having time to recover while I'm doing a movement for another part of my body. Whereas when we get into this 6-day split, all of the emphasis is on a single muscle group that's just getting decimated. And then we move on to the next muscle group, which might even be an antagonist muscle, meaning I train my quads, and when I'm done training my quads, I decide to go train my hamstrings. Or I start with training my hamstrings, and after I'm done with training my hamstrings, I immediately go and start training my quads. So I have the opportunity to get my legs very fatigued in a training session. Same thing is true when we do a push day. When we do a push day, I might do something like a press, then I might do something like a shoulder press. Now my shoulders and my chest are very fatigued. Then I might go into additional movements for my deltoids, like a lateral raise. And then I end up doing some sort of tricep movement. So by the end of it, my tricep has not only received stimulus from the compound movements I've done, but it's also received stimulus from the isolation movements I've done, and they become really fatigued at the end of it because they're all bunched together. They don't have anywhere to hide. They don't have any real time to recover because it's just movement after movement. This means that my intensity, that RPE, it can probably move down a little bit. Now I'm probably looking for a rate of perceived exertion somewhere where I have like 3 reps left. I have 2 reps left. Matter of fact, a lot of times when I train, I leave a couple reps in my tank because I know that I'm going to be pushing myself very hard after my first movement. And then on my next movement, I'm going to be training very intensely again. I'll walk you through this in detail, what this looks like as we break down day number 4. But you want to think about volume as a whole when building a program, and then you want to think about how much intensity that you're bringing to the program. And I want to say that it's always important, regardless if you're doing a 3-day split, you're doing a 6-day split, to have uniform reps. So all your reps should look the same. So if you're doing something like a 1-arm row, those reps should not be compromised while you're doing this additional volume. If you're doing something like a squat, your squat should always still be full range of motion, regardless if you're training 3 hours a week or you're training 6 hours a week. Regardless if you just have a barbell on your back or you've got 300 pounds on your back, you want to be doing full range of motion. All your reps should look uniform. Let's go ahead and let's go through our 4-day split. Okay, so we are looking at in detail day 4 of this program. It's a leg day and we're starting with the hex bar deadlift. So as the phases go through in this program, phase 1 is below. You can click it and receive the whole first phase, but I'm going to change the way I deadlift because you can make exercises mechanically more difficult. So in this case, this is a hex bar deadlift with the handles up, but perhaps in the next phase, we switch it to where the handlebars are down. And now you've instantly increased your range of motion on the exercise by putting the handlebars down. But for the sake of phase 1, we're going to start with the handlebars up and we're going to deadlift. Why? Because this is truly the king of all exercises, not only from a functional standpoint, but if you're just looking to systemically put muscle on a body, there's nothing that's going to do this like a deadlift, because hamstrings, quads, glutes, traps, rhomboids, lats are all in forearms. They're all involved in this exercise. So this is the first exercise of our program. When you train this exercise, you should really be pushing yourself to near failure, but because you're training 6 days a week, it's not necessary that you go to the absolute brink when you're in the gym 6 days a week, but you do want to be very close to failure and have an RPE of somewhere around like a 7 and 8 on this exercise. And maybe week over week, we're going through it, you can increase your intensity or increase the weight and maintain the intensity. That's what I do. I just keep trying to get stronger at my exercises. Not because I particularly care about the weight, but I care about the progression, because you're always going to need, as I spoke about the analogy earlier, you're going to need to constantly feed this thing. You're going to need to feed your muscles. You're going to need to feed it with both nutrients, but also stimulus. So you're going to always have to be upping the ante. And the easiest way to do that is to increase the weight week over week. So movement 1, hex bar deadlift, and then we're going to be doing the leg press. And I love this movement. I think it's, when people talk about like how much they can leg press, it's completely irrelevant. So if you're doing this for a strength building phase, it's not the purpose of the movement. It's to look better with your clothing off. But when it comes to building muscle, I think this exercise is really, well, for a long time has been underestimated. I think it's starting to get some of the clout that it deserves, but I love it because it's going to work the inside of your thighs, your adductors. It's going to work your glutes, and it's also a tremendous amount, first and foremost, of quad. I put my feet really low on the pad. I come down to extreme mobility, like I'm really down here, and back up, stretch, nice, fully flexed quad, all the way back down. This whole thing about not being able to straighten your legs on a leg press, complete nonsense. The problem is that people overload this with so much weight, and then they move just a couple of inches, and that's how people end up hurting themselves when they straighten the leg. You can stand up fully straightened on a hack squat. You can stand up fully straightened on a squat. It's no different on a leg press. So this is our second movement of the program. We're going from a hex bar first, and now we're going to a leg press. So by now, we've really worked our glutes. We've really worked our quads. We've really worked our hamstrings, and I'm looking to polish it up. Remember, on the 6-day split, there's nowhere to hide because you're going from one exercise that works your lower body to another exercise that works your lower body. When you're doing the push movements, you're going from one pushing movement to the next pushing movement. So it's more fatiguing because you're not using different muscle groups between exercises. So for example, you only have 3 days to train, you might squat and then 1-arm row. And that in a sense gives your legs a longer break and time to recover. Whereas on the 6-day program, we're only training legs today. Hex bar, leg press. Now I'm gonna go to some dumbbell lunges. So you'll obviously be using more weight than this, but I'm going to walk down and back. I'm gonna alternate legs as I go. And I love this movement because there's a ton of glute in there, and there's also glute medius. So we got a lot of glute max when we deadlifted. We got a decent amount of glute max when we did the leg press, but now because my legs are getting separated from each other, I'm getting some glute medius in this movement as well, and I really have a chance to polish off my quads. The next movement on the program, because who doesn't want calves, is a seated machine calf. And this is a great movement, not only to grow your calf, but also functionally, it's very important to strengthen the soleus because of its role with your ankle, and ankles needing to be replaced. It's a real thing as you age, and ankles are so pivotal in your mobility in order to deadlift or lunge or squat better. They're a huge part of why people are limited in their range of motion in their hips. So strengthening and mobilizing your ankle is pivotal, and that will happen with a machine calf. And the last movement that we're going to do today, I want to work my abs. Think about rectus abdominis, so those are like the six-pack abs, but we want to work our core. We did get a ton of core while doing something like a deadlift in particular. There's even a lot of pelvic stability, your lower abdominals, when you're getting into that deep portion of the leg press. And I'm gonna finish up with some more of that transverse abdominis while at the same time working my rectus abdominis, those six-pack abs, with a TRX pike. I love this machine. If you don't have access to this apparatus, I don't really think it's a machine, but this apparatus, if you do not have access to it, there's a ton of other options. You could take something like a rower and take the part where you seat on the ladder, the rower, put your toes into it and push your hips up. So there's other options to do the same exercise. But get myself in, I come to a plank position, nice and long, and I really push my hips way up into the air. And that is going to work, again, those six-pack abs, but also my lower abdominals, those transverse abdominals. So the abdominals by your pelvic region. So I took you through the entire day 4. Again, you can click the link below. You can get my entire 6-day program, the entire first phase for free by clicking the link. But I wanted to walk you through day 4 and to remind you that as you have more days to train, we can get more in detail. Like if I didn't have 6 days to train, I might not have time, unless it was a priority, to do something like the TRX pike. I would instead rely on something like the deadlift to strengthen my core. But again, think of the deadlift as like a compound movement for your core, and something like the TRX pike is that isolation movement. And when you put compound movements together with isolation movements, that's really where the magic happens. So thank you for joining me again today. We're at Madison Strength Lab in Larchmont, New York. Thank you for having me. You can click subscribe here at YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram. That's where the majority of my following is. I'm on TikTok. Thank you for joining me here today, talking about a 6-day split, which is very close to what I do in training. We'll probably do another video about this where I go into the 6-day training in more detail, but thanks for joining today. And this is an in-depth look at how I would build a program for someone who had 6 days, 6 hours a week to train.